know Hatun Tash was stabbed on Sunday. We have to say that that stabbing was absolutely disgusting. It was brutal, and in my opinion, looking at the footage, the person was out to kill Hatun. Um, but the most disgusting thing is, there's a few things that are absolutely disgusting on that day. Number one, the police. I have to say this: the police uh, showed a dereliction of duty. They knew the attack was coming for weeks on end, and yet they didn't have any preparation, they didn't have any protection for Hatun. A number of times they pulled Hatun out to Speaker's Corner um, rather than dealing with the mobs. She was punched once, she was taken out rather than the people who were being violent. Mobs surrounded her a number of times, very abusive, and they were Muslim mobs, by the way, and she was taken out. So the police knew that there was an attack coming upon Hatun Tash. They were not there to protect her. They were not there to stop the attack. They came late in the day, and one of the sad things of that day is she collapsed. She actually was walking a little bit and she collapsed, and the police and the medics were not there to pick her up. Instead, later they walked her to the police van. Absolutely disgraceful with the police. The police have a history, a strong track record, a long track record of capitulating to Islam. Always, they've been trained, they've had sensitivity training to minorities. So you mustn't in any way state or show that Islam is to be blamed for any situation that might involve violence. And so we know for a fact that Hatun Tash has been a strong critic of Islam. We know for a fact that she had a Charlie Hebdo t-shirt. So we know that this attack was an attack to silence her free speech. And even Muslim apologists such as Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawa and others all acknowledge that this guy was a Muslim. Although they may say that he was an extremist, the fact of the matter is they admit that he was a Muslim. But the police knew this attack was coming. They've not done anything about it. They were not there to protect her. And they tiptoe around the Islamic issue where there is violence amongst Muslims towards people, and it's never recorded in that way, never stated that way. The whole Islamic issue is put under the carpet, and the British people are not aware as much as they should be about the violence that comes from Islam. And if you say that, you're seen as racist, you're seen as a person who is irresponsible to say that. But the fact of the matter is, Hatun was attacked and the person wanted to kill her because she was a strong critic of Islam. And that's a fact. And the other thing as well, Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawa and many other Islamic apologists absolutely condemning this attack, saying it was disgusting, it was terrible. They're doing taqiyya, because it was only a few weeks ago that Muhammad Hijab and Muslims were screaming at a Muslim who was saying that we should allow Israel to have land, and Muhammad Hijab was insinuating. He didn't actually say be violent to this person, but he was insinuating you've got to shut this Muslim up who seems to be a pro-Zionist. And so we know that they are hypocritical. He and these Muslim apologists are hypocritical. We know for a fact that Paul Williams, Muslim apologist, was ostracized by these Muslim apologists in Speaker's Corner because he as a Muslim apologist was a bit disturbed that many of his colleagues at Speaker's Corner were actually into supporting Islamic extremism such as ISIS, etc. And he called them out on it, and they cut him off from their apologetic sites. So we know that at Speaker's Corner there is strong sympathy by Muslim apologists towards Islamic extremism. Thirdly, these Muslim apologists are strong supporters and have been on record as supporting Hamas, that is a terrorist organisation. So for them to turn around and say that they deplore the attack on Hatun is an absolute disgrace, because you've already been on record supporting Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation. But on top of that, the police have always have a pathetic, stupid, disgusting way about them in Britain. The police have become so politicised, they will do the bidding of the politicians. There's no backbone in the police at all. They're so political, the police, that they would just do the bidding of the political masters. So long as they get a pay packet, then they're happy. They don't care about the rule of law. They don't care about the oath that they actually gave before they became police officers. If they really cared about the oath, if they really cared about being police officers, then they would police in terms of being objective according to the law. But the police have lost all objectivity and are following their political masters. The political masters have indoctrinated the police to stand for minorities, and because they stand for minorities, they're not allowed to mention that maybe this violence was done to a Christian because of Islam. And they're not allowed to say that, because Islam is a minority and it must be protected at all costs. But there have been grooming gangs where Muslim grooming gangs have actually raped women, and they did it because they were Christians. And it's never been reported in the British press, never been said in the British press that that's why some of these rapes were conducted. All kept silent, you see. And so the other issue is the media. So we see the cowardliness of the police, always pandering to the minorities, always pandering to the mob. And they get the person out who's being persecuted. They get the street preacher out who has a gang around them, who wants to beat them up. So instead of getting rid of the gang and the mob, they get rid of the street preacher. Or any person who maybe want their free speech. Don't get rid of the gang who wants to do the violence. Get rid of the individual person who's exercising their free speech. Don't protect their free speech. No. That's too problematic for us. And so they take the easy option to try and sort issues out. But it's not the easy option, because you're capitulating to mob violence. You're capitulating to basically tyranny, where mobs and groups are taking away people's freedom, such as, for example, Black Lives Matter, when they're going around being violent. Police did nothing. Absolutely nothing. Climate change people, they're violent. Police do absolutely nothing. But anybody else, why? Because they're they're protected politically, because they're seen as kind of minorities. But they can be violent, and they can do their violence, and the police have to stand by and watch it, and even take the knee, and even dance when the BLM or these climate change are having a rave. You see silly police officers dancing with them, like the stupid people they can be sometimes. So the old-fashioned style of policing has gone, and we just have absolute politicization of the police. And I have to say to the police, your time will come. There will be a day. In Ukraine, there was a day when the Ukrainian people rose up, and the police did not have a good time, did they? Look at what happened to the police in Ukraine. They got battered all over the place, because the police in Ukraine became political. They became authoritarian. And so the police in Britain, you're heading for a time where there'll be tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, and you'll get battered all over the place. And the reason you'll get battered all over the place is because you became political. You didn't stand for what was right. You didn't stand up against your political masters, and you didn't stand up for what was right, the rule of law. So there's this woman, this individual woman, Christian woman, wears a Charlie Hebdo t-shirt, and she's criticizing Islam. She's had family killed by Muslim, call them extremists, whatever you want. She's had family killed, and she knows that Islam will take away people's freedom, so she's critiquing it in the UK. And she's doing it because she wants to show that if Islam rises, then freedoms will go. And she's been proved right. She has won the argument hands down. There is no way anybody has beat her intellectually on the issue that if Islam becomes stronger, we lose our freedom of speech. It's already happening to her, and it's happening to anybody else who becomes a critique of Islam. And so those who critique Islam are demonized. They are the ones who are called evil. They are the ones who are called bad. And yet Islam as a doctrine of apostasy, Islam in the later surahs is quite clear in the later surahs of the Quran that if you can't win an argument, you are encouraged to shut down opposition, and it says with your hand. So Islam is a problem. Islam is political. Islam is not just in terms of a private faith. It has to go with a theocracy. It has its own Sharia laws. It has its own law courts, and the more it gains traction within a society, the more it will close down opposition, the more it will close down people's free speech. And that has to be faced one day. So what has happened, Hatun, is just a part of a wake-up call to the fact that we have lost our freedoms in the West. There is no freedom in the West anymore, because the press and the media and the powers that be acquiesce to Islam, while they're on the agenda to vaccinate everybody, which is a dereliction of the democratic contract between people and the state. That is a dereliction of the democratic contract. You hear of people in the Secret Service of Macron who are wanting to leave the Secret Service because they don't agree with, and the military in France and the police in France are getting tired of the politicization of these institutions, pandering to Islam, and these hyper lockdowns with trying to force people to have vaccine. People in France are getting fed up, and it will happen in Britain, and the police and the authorities seem to be on a one-headed course of trying to take away our freedoms, fearing Islam, but then trying to bring in draconian rules where we have to have a vaccine whether you like it or not. Cuomo in America, New York, says he will want people to be driven to get their vaccine. So we're heading for a collision in our Western civilization. We're heading for collision with the authorities, whether we like it or not. The authorities are not doing their duty. They're not being responsible. The authorities should have protected Hatun's free speech. It should have been fully in the media, reported in the media fairly. And it should be encouraged that if you are a Christian, you are allowed to preach the gospel. And if you are an individual that wants to critique Islam, you are allowed to do that. It should be encouraged. But instead, the media have been cowardly and not reported anything. Why? Because they have an agenda to destroy Western civilization, to pull it away from its Judeo-Christian roots, to push in this neo-Marxist agenda, push in this wokeism, push in this vaccine tyranny, push in this tyrannical anti-intellectualism, where these days, whether it's in America or in any Western nation now, you are not allowed to have a different opinion, because the far left will get angry with you and get you cancelled off any platform. So we can't even have an opinion anymore. So we're heading for major conflict in the West. And this situation with Hatun is only a part of the symptoms of decay in our Western culture. And so my ultimate point is the media will never ever change. The authorities are never going to change, and the police are not going to change in Britain. And so there comes a point when people have to realize that whether we like it or not, we are in a state of very, very serious. Let me put it a different way. In America, and then you'll understand what I'm saying. In America, there is a cold war going on between the far left and conservatism. It's a cold war, meaning that there's already a war going on already where people are not even speaking to each other in America now. Families are at war with each other. And the far left is absolutely determined to destroy every vestige of conservatism left in America. They're going for the schools, they're going for the army, they're going for every institution they can, and they're not allowing any free speech. They're even working with PayPal and other groups so that they can shut down any conservative view. So there is a cold war going there. Now the Cold War is going to dwarf into civil war because it's already a Cold War. People are already at each other's throats in America, and it's not going to change soon. It's only going to get worse. So what I'm saying is that this issue with Hatun, it's a Cold War. The Cold War is that the establishment, which is the police, the judiciary, the MPs and the political parties, and the wealthy, have all decided that they're going to take society in a certain direction. And it's definitely not Judeo-Christianity. It's definitely not Christianity. So therefore, we need to marginalize Christianity, keep it down. We're going to encourage minorities, and we're going to encourage wokeism, and we're going to encourage a complete collapse of the old way of life, and we're going to bring in vaccine for all, destroy the economy, get people on universal credit score, and move us into some kind of new world utopian order that they have. And they're determined to get us down that road. They're determined to take us down that road no matter what. They've decided no matter what, that's where they're taking us. So we're in a Cold War, and the sad thing is in Britain, it's different in America. In America, you have at least 70 million. It's growing now, I think, to 100 million people that are waking up in this Cold War. They're realizing they're in a Cold War, and they have to step up. But in Britain, we have people are still asleep. They don't realize that we are in Britain in a Cold War. And so, as my friend has said, Cam, Britain is in a bad state because the Cold War is here, and yet our people are still asleep. And if some situation like Hatun doesn't wake Britain up, then I don't know what will. But the British people have got to start waking up. We are at war, whether we like it or not, we are at war. It's a Cold War at the moment, meaning a Cold War is like a culture war, but it's a culture war that you can't ignore anymore. They're coming for your house, they're coming for your home, they're coming for your property, they're coming for your bank balance, they're coming for you. They want to control you in every way. And the rise of Islam is something that the authorities are allowing because they think it's a minority issue. But as they go on with their globalization, as my friend said, it's communism, global communism, and Islam. These are the two powers that are going to be taking away our freedoms. And we're at war. We're at war, whether we like it or not, we're at war. It's a Cold War at the moment in terms of they are going to strip you of your bank balance, they are going to strip you of your free speech, and you're going to be cancelled. If you don't agree, they're going to take away your YouTube channel, your Facebook, your Twitter. It'll all be combined that if you say on YouTube disobey, they'll shut you down on Twitter, they'll shut you down on PayPal, they'll shut you down everywhere. They'll even take your job away, they'll take your universal credit score away because everybody will be on universal credit. And Islam, when they mess up, Islam will come in and fill the vacuum. So that's where we are. We're in the most dangerous time in world history now. We've seen the biggest smash and grab on power and the economy ever seen in history. This has been the biggest smash and grab. They knew that the economy was going to crash globally, so they had to slow it down. So they brought in the lockdowns because you can't have financial transactions going on in the lockdown. They knew the financial system was about to collapse. So they're trying to move us on a universal credit system. And that's why they're trying to smash small businesses with these lockdowns. That's why they're trying to destroy small businesses. And they've been pretty successful. And it's the billionaires that have made a lot of money out of this breaking local businesses globally and especially in the West. They've smashed local businesses. They've smashed our democratic process. They've done mission creep, and they're doing it in stages, breaking us down, saying we're on lockdown, then lift lockdown, then we're on lockdown, lift lockdown, put your mask on. And they're breaking our resolve. So that we don't want to oppose the situation. We don't want to stand up for our freedoms. But it's time, folks. It's time to take the gloves off. And if they want to fight dirty, then I'm sorry, we have to take the gloves off and we have to defend our freedoms. And that's it. Our freedoms have gone. Our democracies have gone. And this situation with Hatun, it's just part of the decay and decline of our Western civilization. And it's time that the British people woke up, and it's time we rolled up our sleeves and we defended our rights. And we have to defend. We have to defend. We are in a situation where, whether you like it or not, I don't like to say it, but the Nazis came along and they told people that they had to be marched off and take vaccines and all the rest of it. That's where we're at. Dividing people, saying you're vaccine, you're not. They'll be telling us you've got to wear a yellow star, and if you wear a yellow star, you can go into the shop. If you don't wear a yellow star, you can't go into the shop. That's where we're heading. It's not going to be a yellow star. It's going to be on your phone. If you don't have it on your phone that you've been vaccinated, you can't go here, there, and everywhere. It's the same principle that the Nazis did with the Jews with the yellow star, to ostracize any person that wants to think freely. And time is running out, folks. Time is running out. We have to, it's not enough to march. It's not enough to speak out. We've got to roll our sleeves up and be willing to defend our freedoms. Men have to stand round Hatun, and if anybody tries to punch her or hit her, the men have to defend her if the police won't. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We have to defend ourselves against tyranny. That is where we're heading. The CIA, the FBI, MI5 in UK, they're politicized by wokeism. They couldn't save Britain. The MI5 couldn't save Britain if they tried. The MI5 were, a few months ago, last year, were on bikes following some kind of Islamic extremists, and the Islamic extremists went and started attacking people. MI5 were following the person, but never did anything. So MI5 and the Secret Service are useless. The British police are useless. FBI has been infiltrated by the far left and communism. CIA the same. There's nothing left. The only things left is us people, ordinary people. And we've got to wake up. We've got to start thinking, this can't go on anymore. It can't be that you can't get on a plane to another country because unless you've been vaccinated twice and had this test and that test. It's the taking away of the freedom of travel. It's taking away the freedom of speech. It's taking away our freedoms. And this cannot happen anymore. It just cannot be. Enough is enough. The only thing that these people will understand is if they already have it in mind to put the British Army on the streets. They already have it in the mind to put the American Army on the streets. They already have it on the cards to have the army on the streets in Australia. It's already in the cards. Why? Because they know they're pushing us too far. They're pushing it too far. But the British Army is coming on the streets. It's being touted in Whitehall. It's being touted, the American Army on the streets at Washington DC, and it's touted in the Australian Parliament to put the Australian Army on the streets. Why? Because they know they're pushing people too far, that people can't take this anymore. But it's left to us. The Ukrainians, politicians, were very, very powerful, and they were corrupt, and they manipulated the people, and the Ukrainian people stood up. And if you go and watch the videos of the Ukrainian police, they did not have a good time when it came to meeting the ordinary people of Ukraine. And I'm sad to say that it's going to have to come to that if the authorities and the police and the authorities are not doing their job in promoting and defending our democratic rights. And they're certainly not defending and promoting Hatun's democratic rights. We are in a totally, we had the Cold War. We had the Cold War. Now, I want to make it clear, the church's job is to preach the gospel. The church's job is not to get involved in politics. But for us, individuals who have a conscience before the state, we have to recognize that the state has moved into tyranny. It's moved into communism. And we have to flex our muscles as people to gain our rights back. And men need to go down. I called for people to go down and protect Hatun. God bless you, Veko. I called for people weeks ago to go down and defend Hatun. I said, go and defend her. And we have to defend ourselves. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect ourselves against tyrannical governments. These are tyrannical governments now. They are not democratic governments. Britain is not a democratic government anymore. America's not a democratic government anymore. America's not a democratic country anymore, nor is Britain. We're not in any democracies. Australia is not democratic anymore. Canada is not democratic anymore. France is not democratic anymore. Germany is not democratic. Our democracies have gone. They went. The day they started imposing these lockdowns, the day they started to bring in this incipient communism, our democracies went, and we allowed our democracies to go because we thought we're helping to solve this virus. But it was more than the issue of virus. It was all to bring our democracies down. So everybody around the world today, in Australia, France, Germany, America, Britain, if we want our freedoms, we're going to have to take our freedoms back. It's as simple as that. They're not going to come democratically anymore. They're not going to allow you to have the freedom to have democracy anymore. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to let Trump come back. They're not going to let the MAGA movement come back. They will keep them down in whatever way possibly they can. They're not going to let you have your voice ever again. You will be deplatformed. If you get PayPal, you'll be taken off. If you have a bank balance, it will be penalized because you'll be on a universal credit score. You will never ever have your freedoms back again. It's gone. So the only way you're going to have your freedoms back is everybody who believes in democracy around the world stand together and fight together against these tyrannical governments that have come in now. It's tyranny that's coming. It's communism that's coming through the back door using COVID-19. And that's the fact of the matter. I can prove it to you very clearly. The shutting down of these democracies with lockdown, what did that do? All that did was destroy the economies. Why did they destroy the economies? Because they knew that they were absolutely in debt. They were in total meltdown. So they had to slow the economy down. So they brought in the lockdowns. And then they wanted to move people into universal credit system, where, as the Great Reset says, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And that is what they're doing, and that is where they're going, and they will not stop at anything. They're not going to stop. It's just they're not going to stop. The only way they're going to stop is you and I and everybody get together and make a stand, proper stand, like the Ukrainians did against the police and the authorities. That is the only way. You cannot trust MI5, you cannot trust FBI, you cannot trust the politicians in Washington DC, you cannot trust the British politicians. They're all in the same pot. They all share the same agenda. And that is some kind of globalist, new world, communist agenda. And that's where they're going. That's what they've decided. And any opposition that comes their way, they will take you down. And that's it. And they'll be brutal about it. They're arresting pastors in Canada, Australia. They're arresting pastors and putting them in prison. They don't care one iota. They're arresting anti-vax people, demonizing them as anti-vax people. They don't care. No compassion, nothing. But they allow BLM to riot. They allow critical race theory to spread like gangrene because they want to cause division. And division and confusion means that they say, oh, well, we have to control the situation so that you have peace. And so it's left to you and me to make our stand. One of the stands that you can make is stand with Hatun and defend her freedom and protect her. There should be a group of men put together as a defense group for Hatun, and they should be there to watch her day in, day out as she goes there. And people have to start to defend their rights against a corrupt police force in the UK that has been politicised. And you're more interested in your pay packet than actually defending the freedoms of the British people. You know, as British police, that what you're doing and the way you behaved in the brutalisation of those who do not agree with this universal vaccine, the way you have brutalised them. And you didn't brutalise BLM. You didn't brutalise the climate change people who were marching. You didn't brutalise BLM, who were extremely violent. But you brutalised people who have been marching for their freedom because your pay packet matters to you. And so you do what your political masters. And one day, you British police, I'm sad to say, you will get your comeback because there'll be a revolution in Britain and it will not be able to be stopped. And you will be like ants in the middle of a road of a giant elephants, and you will be crushed. Sad to say. So just remember, as the establishment, what you sow, you will reap. And you are sowing dangerous things, taking away people's freedoms. You're sowing very, very dangerously. You've been warned. I've warned you many, many times. You've been warned and you will not listen. I even wrote some books on it. So the establishment have been warned. They've been warned and warned. But even now, France is on the tip of civil war. Even now, our own French army and police force are sick and tired of the establishment and are ready to revolt. And this will happen in Britain. People will get sick of this tyranny that is happening. We're living in a time of tyranny in Britain. Britain that we once knew, our freedoms, our society where we could debate and discuss and respect one another, has gone. It's protection for the minority mobs and protection for those